and welcome to another big edition of the RDFNL Netball Show. Thanks to our friends at On Time Delivery Solutions. My name's Andy. I'm joined by Tara Murray from the Star Weekly. What a great finale we had the home and away season.
It was. We already knew who was going to be in the top six, but then we got to see a couple of teams that will be playing finals and how they go up against each other. So it was an interesting round results-wise, just to see where a few teams are at against those other top six sides.
Let's talk about one of the big games of the weekend. It was Wallen that was too good over Rupert's Wood in a very good contest. And for the Pies, I'm not surprised, given how well they pushed the Cats the previous week, to be able to continue on that form and take down another big scalp.
Well, I spoke to Di McCormack from Rupert's Wood, and she was full of praise for Wallen. She said Wallen were brilliant. It was a good standard of game, but she said Wallen were brilliant, well coached, and she said they're definitely one to watch come finals time. She said what they've done with that side, they've put it together really, really well. They've got a lot of young talent across the court, and they can, as we can see, they've knocked off Massett. They came within one goal of Massett, and now they've knocked off Rupert's Wood. They have finished third. There wasn't much for either of these two sides going into that match, but that you've done that. They're entering finals in probably one of the form teams of the competition with the results they've sort of had the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think there's plenty to be excited about Rupert's Wood, because it was a bit of a hurried start to their pre-season campaign, and full credit to them. They've basically locked themselves in the top two all year. So they've just had that ability with their young players coming through and their experience. I think it's been a really good combination for them.
And that's it. Look, I think Rupert's Wood are pretty happy with how their season's gone. Obviously, they've got a top two finish. I think their Bs and their under 19s are still undefeated as well. I think their under 19s are undefeated for a fifth straight season. So it's been quite remarkable, the talent they've got coming through that club. But as you said, it was a rushed one, and they haven't actually done a full training session, all their players together. And you look at that, they've got the experience, they've got those young players who have been through this system for a number of years, and on their day they can beat anyone. It's going to be quite an interesting first final against Macedon, because we haven't seen the two sides play against each other since Anzac Day. And at the same time, you've got Wallen that didn't have an A-grade side last season. They've come in, they've finished third, and could quite easily be in a grand final in a few weeks' time.
They're still my fairy tale finish for the year. I'm a big fan of the old romance, and I like to see that they've come out of the blue. I know, having spoken to a lot of people around the club, on a personal level, I have a great appreciation, as I do with all clubs, with all the work they do with their netball teams, but I have a great appreciation for the work that Wallen have done and what it's done for the club to have that A-grade netball side functioning and to be able to have that success. And as we highlighted last week, Chris Cameron's on board for a couple more years, and I had a chat with him after the game very briefly the other day, and this is really good vibrancy around that club now. And regardless of what happens in the finals, they've made the finals now from not having an A-grade team at all. I think it's a big positive, and for them, they won't be satisfied with that. They want to go all the way.
And it's across the club. I think out of their 7 teams, they've got 6 playing finals. It's only their C-grade netballers that have missed out on playing finals. So they've got a lot of excitement around the club, not just in their A's, which I think a lot of people are excited about what they can do, the A's and the senior football. But it's across the board. They've got that talent coming through, obviously, with their 19s in both the football and netball, making finals as well. So there's good signs going forward for that club.
And of course, we do highlight the great work that Di has done behind the scenes over at Rupo. It's just been extraordinary, the talent that's come through. We've got some of the best young talent in the region in that team, which is fantastic. In the game between Diggers Rest and Melton Centrals, the Boroughs won by 6 goals, but we saw the end of a dynasty over at Centrals, which for me, I think it's pretty heartbreaking.
It is. I saw the Facebook post and I'm like, it's obviously Melton Centrals we've seen in finals for years and years and years. They've missed out on finals this year. And in the end, it was the last game for Rebecca Morabito, Jess May and Mel Laird, who played in both their premierships, won 8 best and fairest between them. And Beck will go down as one of, if not the greatest player in this league. She's won 3 Ryan medals. No one else has done that. So you look alone, her record speaks for itself. But for the 3 of them, they sort of all leave at the one time. And it's going to be a complete rebuild for Centrals next season. It sort of ended a tough year with these 3 girls going. And in the end, there'll be a change in the guard there.
And we look at some the model that Rockbank and Wallen have had to endure. It's not impossible. With you get a few players to sort of come in and you can sort of go forward. But I don't know about you, but I would have looked at these 2 teams at round 1 and gone, they will be playing finals this year.
Look, Melton Centrals was always an unknown. They were unsure who they were going to have in their side, whether they were going to have Sally Portbury, whether they were going to have Rachel Doveston, how many games they'd have Mel led for. So they were always a little bit unknown, so it's not necessarily a surprise to me they didn't make finals. Diggers Rest, I thought, would make finals, but pretty similar to Nelson Central's. Neither of these sides have had consistency through. They've had players injured, players unavailability. They just haven't been able to get their best teams on the court week in, week out, and it's cost both of them. In the end, Central's, Diggers Rest just missed out on that top 6 spot by, I think, a game.
Yep.
They had their full side for one of those extra games, 2 extra games, they make finals. So in the end, it's a season of what could have been for the Boroughs out there.
Hopefully it's something that Pam Strong and the team can look at over the pre-season and work out just the mechanics to get themselves going forward. As expected, the Bombers bounced back to some great form against Wood and Heskett.
Well, the Bombers have played some great netball of recent. We saw them absolutely smash. They beat Rupert's Wood quite convincingly after a couple of tough losses. So they're sort of bounced back. You look at it, they wanted that sort of win heading into finals. They want to build that. They have trialled a number of different players through positions in recent weeks, and look, it's probably important for them because it's a little bit unknown what team they will have for week 1, possibly week 2 of the finals if they make it that far.
Correct.
In that side. And then you've got the Hawks, who I don't think their results have shown how much they've improved. They're in games for halves, 3 quarters, where last year they were being completely kicked out of the park in that first quarter. They've probably got more wins than they have in recent years as well. So there's been a lot of great development for Wood and Heskett. And most of that side's still under 19, so there's really, really good signs going forward.
They scored 35 goals against a strong real side like that 12 months ago. They probably would have scored 12 to 15.
Exactly, and that's it. You can see that how far they've come. And I've spoken to their coach, Wendy, a few times, and she's excited by what they can do. And look, it's just if they can keep that group together and progress through the ranks, I definitely think they'll be on the up in the next few years. Speaking
of 12, unfortunately for Broadford, that was what they scored against Romsey on the weekend as the Redbacks flexed his muscles to win by 38 goals.
It was 20-0 at quarter time. Game over.
Yep.
That sort of said what it was. It was what we expected from Romsey and Broadford. Probably one of Broadford's lowest tallies for the year as well, so that'd be quite disappointing to finish the season like that way. Romsey was another side looking to hit some good form heading into finals. They did try a few things as well. Monique Clark came out to wing defence during the game to obviously try through few things, and Kendra Pham went back into the defensive circle. I think she did play a lot of that in B grade the last couple of years. So they'd made those changes around, and they've got a big match coming up this first week of the finals with probably one of their big rivals on the netball court. So obviously probably an easy match for them to get through and just make sure they did everything they needed to for the first week of the finals.
Final game we will take a look at, and I do find the scoreline quite interesting because Macedon 66 defeating Rockbank 30, but these two teams have met previously earlier on in the year, and Macedon also scored 66 goals to win that game by 30 goals. So I don't know, if you're Rockbank, we know that to lose their coach on the eve of the finals has been tough, but I still think with that nucleus of a team, I would have expected them to be a little bit more competitive, given that Macedon had to fight to the very end against Wallen the previous week, showing some vulnerabilities that I would have thought maybe Rockbank could at least make some inroads on.
Look, I think Rockbank would have been probably a little bit disappointed with that result. Yeah. They would have wanted to be a lot closer heading into finals.
They're better than that.
Yeah, they want to test these top sides.
Yeah.
They don't want to be losing by 36 goals, and that's probably heading into finals. It was a challenge for they had nothing to lose, they had nothing to gain. They were sort of always going to finish in that 6th position. So whether they tried a few things and kept their cards close to the chest for the first week of finals, but for me, I would have wanted to really test myself out against the best team in the competition. And in the end, the Cats were way too good. They had a high shooting percentage, and you had an even spread of goals between Kira and Chloe up there, who we all know what they can do in those shooting circles. So it was a good warm up for the Cats for finals. They've been waiting for finals, I think, since round 1 after the exit of last year, and they've gone through the regular season undefeated for a second straight year. So they weren't expecting that this year. They've tried things, they've switched players around, they've got a lot more depth, and they weren't expecting to go through undefeated, but they've done it again.
They certainly have. Congratulations to them for being minor premiers back-to-back years in a row. As we talk up their finals campaign, they do take on Rupert's Wood in week 1 of the finals, and obviously we haven't got our predictive goggles going on in the future, but we know VNL is going to cause some problems here, which it will make things very interesting.
It is. I don't want to do my footy tipping my netball tipping until Thursday. Now with these, it's going to be very interesting. As for people who don't know, you've got your Victorian Netball League finals start Wednesday night.
Yep.
You've got your semi-finals, so there's a knockout semi-final, and then you've got your semi-final where you've got people go through the grand final. Prelim final is Sunday, and then the grand final is the following Sunday.
Yep.
So these teams could be impacted for not just the first week of the finals, but the second week of the finals. And you've got 5 of these 6 teams in finals could be impacted. You've got some that could be more than others, and it could impact results, and I think it will. It depends on who is playing and who's not playing, and there's a couple of teams which are impacted more than others. I think there's a few coaches hoping a few VNL teams lose or win, so they get their full complement of players. So it'll be quite an interesting week.
And like Assumption does with junior footy, VNL does take priority.
It is, and look, even during the regular season, we've seen players not play games because of VNL. We've seen them on restrictions of half or 3/4. Come finals time, I think coach is going to be saying you're not playing your other finals. All your focus is on your VNL.
Do you think clubs have sort of, I should say wised up to it, but sort of open their minds up to it, that when they have got players playing VNL, that they will try and go a little bit deeper into their depth and maybe try and pull players up to try and mould them in just in case they may be required?
Oh, definitely. You look, Macedon's got, I think, probably 11, 12 players that are in that A-grade squad. Riddle, they've had a lot of B, C, even under 19 players playing their side in recent weeks as well, because they're one side that could be heavily impacted by VNL. You look at, they're trying the different things. Rupert's Wood they might not have Claire Johnson, but look, they've thrown Amy Stars back in defence to give them a different defensive option. So these teams are aware of it. They have missed these players during the season, so they do look at options that they might have to use come this time of year.
VNL impact or no VNL impact, who wins this game?
If it's VNL impact, I think Rupert's Wood.
Yep.
I don't think Macedon can handle losing Chloe Wilson.
Yeah.
We saw last year they lost her come finals time and they had a big impact. Obviously, they've tried a lot more things. They've tried a few different combinations. That if they lose Chloe Wilson, that's massive. If Macedon lose Chloe Wilson, they also lose Janelle Birch.
Correct.
So I think Macedon still do have a few things up their sleeve that we haven't seen as well. So look, I think if they've got their full side, I think they get the win.
Yep.
If they don't, I think Rupert's will win.
Yeah, I'm going with Macedon on either occasion. I know Rupert's would have got a lot to prove because they need to make the grand final at the very least. That's I think that'd be the minimum expectations for them. But I think with Macedon, that effort from last year, it hurts them to be virtually unstoppable during the home and away season and then go out in straight sets. I think they just need to win that opening week, and then whatever happens from there on, I think that'll be fine. But to do it, I think to get the monkey off the back there, I think is important. I think they'll get it done.
Look, I think they need to make a grand final. You say Rupert's would need to make a grand final. I think Macedon do too, especially after last season. They were shattered after last season, and they've done a lot of work to make sure it doesn't happen again. So it'll be interesting how this first week pans out.
They don't have Melton Centrals in there causing trouble like they have in the past by upsetting teams just when they've flown under the radar. So it's interesting. Romsey and Riddle, this is going to be a blockbuster. They've fought a number of memorable games already this year. Will they fight another epic?
If they're both at full strength.
Yeah.
This is one. Riddle could be the most heavily impacted by VNL. They've got 4 players all in the one VNL side. So if the players in Division 1 have to play a preliminary final on the Sunday, Riddle's in trouble.
See you later, Big Colwell. She's gone.
Lauren Close, Alan Close, Maddie Wallmeyer.
That's huge.
That's huge. So look, they have brought other options up. Obviously, they've looked at players who can play up in that top grade. Obviously, Alexis Klimas is one who they've brought up from C grade in recent weeks.
Molly Tresize as well.
Molly Tresize. You look, Alexis played in A-grade premierships a couple of years ago. So they've looked at bringing players up. You've still got a lot of young talent. Romsey, at this stage, from what I can gather, it could be only Kaylee Armstrong that's affected. So you might have a different one there. If it's full strength, I think it'll be pretty interesting, pretty close match, as we've seen both of the 2 matches between these 2 teams this season have been. If they're not, if Riddle are losing their players, I think Romsey will win easily.
I think Romsey, I'm with you. I think Romsey should win because, as you said, you've got those 4 players. That's 4 of 7 positions. Now, they are quality cattle that you've got on the court there. If they're not making a preliminary final, just with those players alone, I think the Blaze, it'd be disappointing for them too because they are some quality players. You could put those 4 players anywhere, they should be winning games in netball.
Yeah, exactly. So look, it'll be tough. I think Riddle will get up if they have full strength.
Yep.
If they don't, I think it'll be Romsey.
Yeah, I think Romsey, I'm with you. The reigning premiers, they've been sliding on the radar just a little bit. I think that'd be too strong. And Wallen v Rockbank, I think this is absolutely fantastic. Where these 2 clubs have come over the last few years, not having A-grade sides, and now they've come together in their first finals campaign together in quite some, for Rockbank, first time ever. Wallen had come back into it. This is a spectacular contest. I think the competition is a winner for having these two teams playing off against each
Well,
other.
that's what I spoke to Melson Central coach Randy Pereira, and he's disappointed his side didn't make finals, but he said for the competition, it's great to have these two sides in finals. It's great to see Wood and Heskett improving, and he said for the competition itself, there is a lot of growth, a lot of development, and he's pretty pleased for the competition itself. Obviously disappointed himself, and look, this could be an interesting one. Wagga did play finals a few years ago. I think the first year I covered this league, they did play finals, where Rockbank haven't played finals in this. I think they may have, a lot of this group may have played finals elsewhere together.
Correct.
And they've obviously played in different competitions, so it's going to be interesting quite up. Rockbank have no VNL players either, so they're not going to be impacted throughout the final series as long as all their players are fit and fire, and they're going to be fine. Wallen have a couple. You've got Georgia Boquette, who is also part of that play side with all those Riddle players. And you've got Zoe Kransberg, who could quite easily be in a grand final for MU Lightning in a few weeks' time as well. So they've got a couple there, but I think Wallen's going to be too strong. We've seen what they've done the last 2 weeks against Macedon and Rupertswood, and I think they'll get the win.
I agree with you on that one there. Wallen to be too strong there, and Rockbank to build on that going forward. Thanks to our friends at On Time Delivery Solutions. Thanks to you, Tara, for jumping on board. That has been the netball wrap up for this week. We look forward to catching up with you next week as we count down the final run of the grand finals.
Thanks for having me.